on? They're spending on bureaucracy. There is nothing efficient about the government. You ever been to the DMV?
I have.
That's not efficient. You ever seen how many people work in some of these organizations?
Not efficient.
Not efficient at all. You ever seen how many young, healthy, productive people depend on the U.S. government for prolonged periods of time? It's crazy.
In fiscal year 23, the federal government raked in a staggering $4.4 trillion, and it came from individual income taxes, Social Security and Medicare taxes, corporate income taxes, and other revenue. The remaining revenue comes from things like alcohol and tobacco, estate taxes. estate taxes. Sometimes I forget how to say a word. Customs duties.
So they brought in 4.4.
And even fees from national park.
Would they spend 6.4?
And they spent
six trillion?
No, the net cost was 7.9 trillion.
Yeah, so it's even worse.
Yeah.
Broke.
And
the U.S. is like a broke boy. That's what they are. They spend more money than they take in. Broke.
Yeah, but they're spending on healthcare, accounting for 22% of the net cost.
No, they're spending on
Medicare,
making
Medicaid.
the people dependent on them. That's what they're spending on. They're spending on bureaucracy. There is nothing efficient about the government. You ever been to the DMV?
I have.
That's not efficient.
Right.
You ever seen how many people work in some of these organizations?
Not efficient.
Not efficient at all. You ever seen how many young, healthy, productive people depend on the U.S. government for prolonged periods of time?
In last week's episode, we talked about how so many counties, what was it? Like 40, 50% are now dependent on the government.
It's crazy.
It used to be 1%.
Now, we got a healthcare crisis in this country. There's an immense amount of people. I think every single county in America now has at least 20% obesity. National crisis. Guess what happens? The people who are obese today are going to be the people who are future dependent on the government healthcare system. It's only going to get worse. So you can either try to solve the root cause or not. You want to stop healthcare spending in America in terms of not making it such a big drain because you got to support your citizens? Why don't you look at food regulation? Why don't you stop the food companies from putting all this poison in the food? That'd be a wild idea. Second, if you go and you look at how many people are getting benefits that shouldn't be getting the benefits, that'd be a wild idea. Mm-hmm. Again, we talk about the Leon Cooperman on CNBC saying, why am I getting a Social Security check? I'm a billionaire. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Big problem. What is the explosive, controversial thing to touch is all the entitlement programs. Social Security, Medicaid. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
Are they going to be able to actually continue to pay this to people? Well, your population is going to be older and bigger than you thought it was going to be. They're becoming more and more of a drain. Keep borrowing all this debt, interest rate, or your interest payments is more than your national defense. You're shipping money to every war around the world except for the war that your people are fighting at home. There was people over the last 3 weeks in North Carolina who were literally lost in the woods. Imagine being within a mile of your home, but feel like you're on another planet. Mm-hmm. You got no power, you got no electricity, you got no cell phone service, you don't know if anyone's coming to get you. And you're literally in your hometown. That's what the experience of many people in North Carolina was last week. And I get that there's a lot of people saying, oh, you guys are, critiquing us unnecessarily. What I know is we wrote a check. I know a lot of friends who wrote checks. I know a lot of friends who went to North Carolina. I know a lot of people who I saw online who said, I'm from Georgia. I'm from Alabama. I'm from South Carolina. I got a helicopter. I'm going to come and I'm going to try to find people. Why is it that in a moment of dire need that our citizens needed help, that you have private citizens that are so compelled to step in because they're watching the government? Forget all the nonsense, all the speculation. Put all that aside. Let's say none of that's true. FEMA said, I'm going to give you $750. You know what $750 can buy you? For the average family in America, probably 2 weeks of food, maybe a little bit of gasoline. That's it. So what are those families going to do after 2 weeks? Where do you expect them to go? What do you expect them to be able to survive on? Instead, though, the average immigrant coming to America is getting debit cards, free cell phones, hotel rooms.
Not average immigrant.
I'm sorry, illegal immigrant.
Yeah.
If you look in New York City, you get more aid showing up to New York City and staying in a hotel than you did if your house got washed away in North Carolina. That is insane.
Crazy. I don't know, that whole thing. We need to do an entire episode on FEMA because I have thoughts.
Ooh, if Polina wants to go down the rabbit hole. FEMA, let me tell you how this works. If Polina's got you in her crosshair, you're in trouble. Oh boy.
I got hot takes on FEMA. Anyway, I've always had.
Polina's got you in your I've seen this play.
My hot take started, I think, with Hurricane Katrina, so it's been brewing for a while.
Oh, you mean where they left the people to die?
It's been brewing for a while.
I know people.
FEMA doesn't know I'm coming after them.
I know people who were in the National Guard who were sent down there with weapons to protect the stores because it was so bad, it was so dire that people were so in need that they were willing to do whatever they needed to be able to get food for their families.
Yeah. I remember.
So one thing Americans will never do. I truly believe that's the one thing Americans will never do.
What?
Is American soldiers will never turn their guns on their own people. And God forbid we ever got into fraction in the country. I truly believe that. Is that America, in a very weird way,
is still united?
The people are united. The politicians may not be. But when push comes to shove, the people realize it's the people versus those in power. And I think that the U.S. in particular is very unique in that standpoint. I think there's a lot of countries around the world. You could say us versus them, left versus right, one side, whatever. I think in the United States, you see it. You see how people react to certain situations. It's us versus them, but it's the people versus those in power, influence, etc. I hope that we never get to any situation like that. I think that will be good. But I do think that American soldiers would have a very hard time turning their weapons on their own countrymen. And I think that speaks to the spirit of America and how maybe how much people really buy into the ethos and the values of the country.